So I've discovered that most people in the theatre, which makes them different from other earthlings, people who have, people who inhabit the planet Earth, that people who go into the theatre conceive a vocation for it. And it tends to be, oddly enough, around the age 16, 17, 18. And they go and they see a play, or they're in a live performance, and something happens. And they have a kind of falling in love experience, and they want to participate and be part of that thing that they saw on stage. And for me, I remember exactly when it was. It was a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream by Peter Brook at the Aldwych Theatre in London. I was 16, and I was just transported, exalted, and I made a kind of pact with myself. And I've just done a play in London called Shakespeare in Love, and it's exactly about that moment, about the moment when we all fall in love with the theatre and how precious that moment is. Well, we're very excited to be here in Transylvania for our second time in Transylvania with this play, Ubu Roi, King Ubu by Jarry. The history of the company is that I think it was like 2007, Peter Brook invited me and Nick Ormerod, the two of us, to come and form a company of French actors, and we found some French actors to perform Andromaque de Racine at the Bouffe du Nord, which played in many different places in Europe, including Paris and London, and in Turin. And we were all so happy, there was many invitations, we decided to find another play for exactly the same actors. So it was very different, and we wanted it to be very different. So the Racine is a French classical tragedy, and we chose Ubu Roi by Jarry, which is the exact opposite, or seems to be the exact opposite, but both plays have very similar themes. It was a very good play for the actors to act. I always say that. I always choose plays around the actors that I have to work with them. That's what I say to myself. But always that plays end up having something of today's politics or of what's happening in the zeitgeist in them. But I don't ever think of that directly. If I did, I'd paralyze myself. I set myself the fiction, if you like, that I'm choosing it for the actors. It's a play that's very famous in France and in other countries. It's also famous in Romania. I've discovered that it's more famous than loved. It's written by a 14-year-old, and it's a very scatological story of King and Queen Ubu that appears to be Shakespearean, like Richard III, but it's very comic. Its humour is very schoolboy humour, so it's humour about lavatory brushes and lavatories, and people are very, very selfish in a very banal way. People want to steal everything. People want to eat everybody else's food. People want to, if you've got something, I want to take it from you. I want to take that camera now. It's about people who are very, very selfish. And it manages to be funny. And he invents an extraordinary language in which these people express themselves. And we worked on it. And Jarry's theory to himself, the writer, in 1897 was that he wrote it about a maths teacher that he hated, and that he was Ubu, and that his friends used to call him, this teacher of mathematics, Ubu. But the more we worked on the play, the more we realized it's about two people. It's about Father Ubu and Mother Ubu. It's about two people. And it seemed clearer and clearer to me that he was actually writing about a mother and a father. And he was unconsciously, I think, writing about his own. And the play is a great kind of negation of bourgeois civilization. It does everything to destroy the fragile civilization, the fragile things that we've built up around us. So these people are stealing, as I was saying, they're swearing, they shit where they like, they eat where they like, they do whatever they like, where they like. But for some reason it should be very boring, you see. They murder whoever they like, for example. It should be very, very boring. Why on earth would we want to be entertained by or see these rather two-dimensional horrors? And the problem is that we are quite fascinated by them. That's our problem. Our problem is that there is something really very interesting about Ubu, and people keep reading it and talking about it and putting it on. And of course, part of the problem is that we're all afraid of the Ubus that are inside us, that inside our civilized exteriors there are people who could come out, and that the web of civilization is very, very thin. And we know the history of the last 60 or 70 years teaches us that although it can take thousands of years for a civilization to be built up, for the way that we respect each other, the way that we love each other, the way that we treat each other well, it can take hundreds and hundreds of years for this to build up. The amount of time it takes to destroy it is very brief. In fact, it can happen in an afternoon. That's what's so frightening. It was proved in the 1930s in many, many different places in Europe that civilization can break down like that. And it examines that, and I think it's very important that we do examine it. And it's very, in that respect, it's very serious that we know just how fragile civilization is. First of all, there's a famous story that there was a riot on the first night of Ubu Roi when the actor goes forward and says "meurtre," and that the audience rioted because they couldn't bear to hear this filthy word said in France. It's not true. It's a complete myth. That the play had been published for 6 months. There was hardly anyone. It was a tiny little Théâtre de l'Ouverture with less than 100 people there. It was all a claque of. It was great intellectuals from Paris, and we know that Jarry told his friends that if everybody cheered the play, his friends were to boo it, and if people booed the play, they were to cheer the play, because what Jarry wanted was a provocation, and he wanted a provocation. But so it's always been a bit of a lie, this myth of how outrageous Ubu is on stage. What's the real outrage is why we are fascinated in watching these two human beings, these two incarnations of Ma and Pa Ubu. That's what's really shocking, is why am I sitting there watching this for 1 hour and 50 minutes? That's what's very interesting. It's also interesting why I read the murder pages in the newspapers. You know, why do so many newspapers sell so many copies telling us stories of middle-class murder? It's kind of like we know it's there. We like to keep an eye on it because maybe it's in ourselves. The body means everything to me. It's all I've got in life is my body. All I have to work with the actors is the body. I mean, there's two things in life, isn't there? There's the body and then there's material things. So, I mean, the body is actually very, very important. We may have spiritual things as well, but our bodies remain very important. It's the main channel of communication between us. So, you know, this would be very different if it was radio. You know, I'm talking into a camera, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to a camera, so you get a little bit more information from me because things are being expressed through my body. I think that Ubu isn't shocking because we put something particularly shocking on stage, because to do a shocking act on stage is quite easy, really. It's quite easy to shock an audience, and, you know, we've all been shocked, and, you know, there are sort of shocking things on YouTube that people advise us not to see because we won't be able to unknow them. We won't be able to forget them if we do see them. So I don't see them. No, what is not shocking, but what is disturbing is helping us to think about who we are. And when we're fascinated by these other people, to think how much of that is in me. That's to come to a deeper understanding of myself and how we are with other people. And to develop above all our empathy which is very different from our sympathy. Because when we are sympathetic with other people, we identify with them and we think, oh my God, you've hurt your finger, I've hurt my finger. Oh, you know, and we sympathize with people. But really, empathy is more important. Empathy is when we understand that somebody is having we understand that somebody else is different from us and that somebody is suffering from us in a different way. not even suffering. Empathy is basically just understanding that other people are different from us. And that's a very important thing to do. And I think that's one of the reasons that we go to the theatre, is it improves our powers of empathy. And that when we watch very bad films or bad pieces of art, actually it does the opposite. It makes us feel that we're exactly like everybody else and we've got nothing to worry about. I think it's rather important that we develop our empathy and understand that we are different from other people and that we can still love people and that we can become close to people, but that we are different from each other. I think, first of all, there's very little to spirituality more than just being kind to one another. So I think that the idea of that certain things are spiritual and other things aren't spiritual is automatically incredibly dangerous. I mean, how I treat you, how you treat me, how I treat the people, we're already in the world of things that are in a way spiritual. We shouldn't be too grand about spiritual. Somebody once asked a rabbi, why can nobody see God anymore? And the rabbi replied, because nobody can stoop low enough. I think basic understandings of kindness can help us. As you grow older, the news becomes more shocking because you understand how simple things are, really. And what I found watching the news, it never had such an emotional effect on me. As I'm older now, and I get very shocked. I get more shocked watching terrible things, bombs and so on going off, thinking, there's a terrible unkindness and how people can do such terrible things, and could I do it? If I were under threat, could I do these things? I think any place where we speak or are together is the correct place for us to talk about this. I think making the world a better place automatically makes me panic. Because I think one needs to see a psychiatrist, to think, can I make the world a better place? Probably not. I think some humility is very much caused for. So I think that in our daily humane acts of kindness, we serve to make the world, at least if not better, at least not worse. I think we need to keep ourselves very, very small. Of course, politics influences all the art I do, but it influences every conversation I have. It influences every conversation you have. It influences. No one can shut these things out from themselves. It's the zeitgeist gets in. You don't have to be a wonderful, strange, weird person to let the zeitgeist in. It's the oxygen that we breathe. I think that for me. I think a work of art is a very special thing. I think a work of art changes how we see things. For me, the art I prefer doesn't have a direct political message. In other words, it doesn't say, this is the way to vote. That a work of art is more complex than, not more complex than that, but it's more, and it communicates much more through enigma than through direct intervention. Now, there are some works of art that do tell you how to vote. There are some works of art that are directly invasive of your mind, and I enjoy them and I appreciate them, but they don't have as much a strong an effect on me as something that disturbs me through its ambivalence and through its enigma, into thinking things more about how I see things and challenging my political attitudes. I think art moves us. Art moves us to understand that we have things in common with other people and things not in common with other people. I think any work of art, be it a painting, be it a piece of theatre, anything that we offer, a meal, God knows, Jesus, a conversation that we have that we offer people, it enables us to share something and see if we have something in common. And I think that's very, very important. Of course, a work of art is, in some respects, a more sophisticated thing. For me, I'm not so interested in works of art that directly tell me what I should think politically. I like works of art that question how I think politically. Van Gogh once painted a sunflower, and at the time people didn't think it looked like a sunflower. Now he's changed how we see sunflowers, so they are, all sunflowers now look different in a way. In fact, he changed sunflowers. That's a huge example, and it's a rather apolitical example, but with a very small p. The artist's true function is to challenge how we see the world. So any artist who tells you, anybody who says the way that you see the status quo is exactly how things are, that's probably not an artist. Somebody who says to you, this is how things are, but do you think maybe they're like that as well? Or what do you think about that? Then maybe we're getting much more into the world of art that way.